couple of guys that I want to talk about here before we move on to the starting five documentary. Lonnie Walker and Jordan Walsh. I feel like that's kind of the talking points around Twitter, and even Scal mentioned on the broadcast. He's like, at halftime, I was walking around, everyone's asking, is Lonnie Walker going to make the team? And, Lonnie had a really big game against the Raptors the other night. And I think Lonnie has shown that, this is why when we had Corrales on and we've talked about it, like him on an Exhibit 10 deal, like this guy's an NBA player. Like he's in his mid-20s. Like he's definitely an NBA player. I don't know if it's going to be with the Celtics, but the growth of Jordan Walsh is kind of coming hand in hand right here. And I think we mentioned them too, along with Baylor Shireman, who's had somewhat of I would say, underwhelming preseason.
He's not going to play for this team.
It's been underwhelming. And so I think it comes down to the Jordan Walsh, Lonnie Walker conversation. And one of the things that I said was Lonnie Walker's going to make this team if it feels like both Jordan Walsh and Baylor Shireman are not ready for even those O'Shea Brissett minutes. It feels like Jordan Walsh is ready for those minutes. And I think long-term makes the most sense to give him those minutes. But I still would like Lonnie on this team, but it's going to come down to just a money thing of whether or not they think it's worth it. But what have been your thoughts on, you can take either Walsh or Walker here. Let's talk about both of them, but give us your thoughts on whichever way you want to go.
Well, remember when we were doing our preview, I mentioned that it was really between Lonnie Walker and Jaden Springer because Jaden Springer has that contract.
Lonnie Walker's win that bad, I'll tell you that much right now.
Oh, yeah. In the first two games in Abu Dhabi, Jaden Springer got his opportunity, right? And I think we were like, is Lonnie Walker even going to get a chance? It's a preseason, so the way that they kind of give people chances, it comes in spurts, right? So Lonnie Walker got his chance the last two games as Springer kind of was relegated to, where he probably is in the rotation, which is the 14th or 15th man. Lonnie Walker is talented enough to be in this rotation for sure. What I was really interested in with Walker was how much they were having him actually run point guard and run pick and roll. I didn't have I couldn't get the numbers on the advanced stats of how many pick and rolls he ran, but it seemed like that was a big focus of the offense, was putting the ball in Lonnie Walker's hands with shooters spacing around him. They didn't have Peyton Pritchard necessarily on the ball the entire time he was on the court with Lonnie Walker. He was actually spacing the floor. So was Sam Hauser. And it seemed like that's what they were trying to do with Lonnie Walker, was to see, what could he be as a backup point guard, that could come in so Peyton Pritchard could still function as a floor spacer, because Peyton's looked great on the ball. Yeah. I think his primary asset on the court is his floor spacing. So if you have Lonnie Walker, who I think a lot of people were thinking more of just a wing complement there, if he can actually be a primary ball handler for a second unit, that actually opens up a lot of things for that second unit, where you can still have like a Derek White spacing on and playing his normal role off the ball, and Lonnie Walker being a little bit more of a featured playmaker. He had 7 assists against the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't know what he had last night against the Raptors. He was a little bit more of a scorer last.
Only one against the Raptors, but I think your point still stands. So as far as him handling the ball, and I like that point that you're making here of, because when you think about, let's say Lonnie Walker doesn't make the team, I think J.D. Davison is just bound to be a two-way guy as long as he's with the Celtics. There's not going to be much of a spot. So once you look, obviously you have Drew, Derek, and Jason in the starting lineup, and all three of them can be the main ball handler at different points, and even Jalen at certain times. But then on that bench, it's kind of Pritchard can be that guy, and almost really no one else, just from a pure bench perspective. So I do think that's an interesting case for Lonnie Walker to make this team. I mean, I think, listen, it's not my money. And, if he's going to cost $2 million, which is really $8 to $10 million. And so it's the Celtics are still going to be, whether or not they have Lonnie Walker, the CBA restrictions that come along with being a second tax regime, it still applies, whether or not they pay him the extra tax, or that's not going
right. But if you trade Jaden Springer, who's making like $4 million, then it's not that big a deal,
Yeah, but the question is, how do you I don't think he's shown much for someone to be like, oh yeah, I want to take, Jaden Springer and give you a second round pick. It's probably more like, I want a second round pick to take him at this point.
That's fair.
So you do have to have him on. So that's the issue with that, because Jaden Springer's contract is guaranteed. So he's going to be on, even if the Celtics waive him, I was reading earlier, they still have to pay him everything. So he's going to be on this team. Like it's not going to make any sense to just let him go. So yeah, so it's going to come down to, do they want to pay Lonnie Walker? That is it worth it for a guy that, he's going to be the 9th to 11th man somewhere in that spot. And, and like I said, going to Jordan Walsh, I think Jordan Walsh has looked really good in this preseason. Like I was a little somewhat, I don't want to say down, but wasn't feeling great about him after summer league. He did not look the way that I was hoping for a progression, and we talked ourselves into it. Hey, he's still only 20. He's like, let's really think about it. This is junior year of college, and he's looked like a guy that's had a taste of NBA and now is getting, he's a McDonald's All-American. He has the pedigree for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's looking more like that guy. The jump shot looks way smoother this year, looks more confident. He's shooting 38% from 3 on 16 shots so far in the preseason. He had 10 rebounds in 30 minutes against the Raptors last night. So I love the idea that Jordan Walsh is another one, and I'm not putting him in the Jalen and Jason category, but that's just a wing. He's a wing that can also, play a little bit above his size with his athleticism and his length, like his long ass arms. Like, that's going to be trouble for teams.
7'3" wingspan, I think.
Yeah, it's something insane. And so, I think also, like, I would love to keep both of them. If they don't, for the financial reasons, I understand. But I do think Jordan Walsh is ready to get at least the first crack, I think, at those O'Shea Brissett minutes, because he's just got more long-term capital with the Celtics than Lonnie Walker does. But I would love Lonnie as kind of a security blanket to have. So if Wick doesn't give a shit about writing checks anymore because he's trying to sell the team, maybe that hurts selling the team. I don't know what that does, but that's what it's going to come down to. Pure finance is not going to affect how this team can manage the roster. But I'm excited for what I've seen out of Jordan Walsh.
Yeah, I know that your internet was a little funky yesterday, but Scal yesterday, I feel like Scal has done this multiple times. I feel like Scal listens to Green with Envy because he always steals my comparisons. Like when I compared Scotty Barnes his rookie year to year 2 Giannis, like a year later, Scal's saying that, right? Now I compare Jordan Walsh to Andre Iguodala on the broadcast last night. Scal compares Jordan Walsh to Andre Iguodala.
Oh, I missed that. I didn't get to that.
And I'm like, man, Scal, like, just come on the show. Stop asking for a fee. Goddamn, Scal. But I think with Jordan Walsh, the 3-point shot, to be able to play on this team, you have to be able to shoot if you're a wing. That's why I don't think Jaden Springer has a spot on this team, and he's not. Like, Lonnie Walker's a better pick and roll player than Jaden Springer is, right? So I don't think Jaden Springer is going to be able to crack a rotation with this team.
And there's enough good defenders that, like, it's great that Jaden Springer's a great defender, but there's enough defenders that you can get by with what Lonnie Walker can give you. Like, that's not going to break the integrity of your defense with what else you're going to put out there with him.
For sure. And Jordan Walsh's 3-point shot looks great. You actually texted me the other day a thread of his 3-point shot. It looks beautiful. Looks very Derek White-esque. It's smooth. There's not a lot of extra movement to it. Not a lot of variability to the shot. So it looks great. And then one of my favorite thing is his awareness on the court, both ends of the court. I think he's a very smart player. There was this one play yesterday against the Raptors where I think it was either 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1 break where Jordan Walsh was the lone defender getting back, and he kind of like stunted at the ball handler and was able to play 2 and deflected the ball and just saved a layup, and just like little things like that. Jordan Walsh, I think, has great instincts, and he's so young that it makes a lot of sense to keep him, long-term future for this team. Jordan Walsh should be a part of things. And I agree that I think he should get the first crack at a rotation spot.
Yeah, he needs to get some of that experience, because I think it's not sink or swim time by any means for Jordan Walsh, but it's like, let's start to nibble at, like, what can this be with Jordan Walsh short term and long term. And I think if you do keep Lonnie Walker, it makes it all that much easier, because you're like, okay, cool, we still have Lonnie Walker. If we feel like Jordan needs to, like, hey, why don't you sit back and let's do some tape work, and Lonnie can take those couple of minutes for a few weeks here. You have that, and I'm sure there'll be different times that
Lonnie is like, he's almost insurance for like a month or 2-month long Derek White or Jaylen Brown injury.
No, that's a great point. I thought about this actually while I was watching that Raptors game this morning. Is the Celtics got a bill of health? Like they other than Porzingis, who that's Porzingis, right? Porzingis getting to 55 games every single year is, we're going to sweat it out, and as long as he's on this team, that's going to be the case, and that's why we have 4 different centers that we can play, and then they kind of live in their own category of the roster, because we're going to have multiple guys running in and out. We didn't have any prolonged absences of Derek White, of Drew Holiday, of Jason Tatum, of Jaylen Brown. It's a long NBA season. 3 out of those 4 guys are coming off an Olympic run. Jaylen Brown's been traveling all over the world. Like, they've been in the finals, the conference finals, and the finals the last 3 years. an injury is almost more than likely to happen than anything else to at
Mhm.
least one of those guys at some point. And you're 100% right. I think that's the other major case for fuck it, let's pay Lonnie and have him there, because you saw the offense that he can put up, like, and you see the ball handling, you see he's exactly what you just said. He's the insurance for that.
Mhm.
Or if there is a month that we need to go without one of those guys, you can backfill some offense, you can backfill some ball handling, you cannot have to, exude other pressure on those other guys to make sure they stay healthy. If one of them goes down, you're not leaning too heavily on Tatum or too heavily on Drew Holiday, whoever it is. And so that's the other, I think, critical point for Lonnie Walker that he would provide, that there's not really many people on this roster can give you that insurance, but Lonnie Walker could be a guy that doesn't really play much. All of a sudden there's an injury and he's playing 15 minutes a night to try to help, level the tide. And I think that would probably be the biggest case that I would make for why Lonnie Walker, regardless of what it's going to cost, is that it's probably worth it because we're going for it anyways. So why not have the insurance to back it up? So that's an excellent point right there.